Lately, I've been doing a live streaming test with dedicated cameras as webcams. I'm going to show you one of the recent streams with all the different cameras set up, different views. Pretty interesting, so let's check that out. This view is the standard Canon M50 with the kit lens this time, the 15-45 at 15 millimeters, 1/60th of a second, f6.3. The reason I'm doing that is that I can, if I want to zoom, the aperture won't change, because this lens has a variable aperture, which basically means the hole inside the lens changes based on where you're zoomed. So it goes from 3.5 to 6.3. So if you do it at 6.3 throughout the whole range, it'll be consistent. Anyways, 1/60th of a second, f6.3, ISO 2500. So you definitely have to raise the ISO compared to like that Sigma lens, the f1.4. Go to this one. This is the Sony A6000 through HDMI. Same settings, so it's the 1/60th of a second, f6.3, ISO 2500, and it looks like I had the Sony for a lot of my previous tests set to standard one style, whatever you want to call it. There's different color styles for these cameras and they apply to video. But I set it to auto. It's very vivid. Definitely, it's got quite the colorful look to it on automatic. Oops, my hand just made a weird noise. So it's interesting, right, that they're pretty similar views, but there is a difference. So we go to this. You can see the camera setup I'm doing right now. The M50 right here with the kit lens. Oh, the Sony also has its own kit lens. It's a 16 to 50 OSS 3.5 to 5.6, but I have it at 6.3. In this case, I MacGyvered a bracket, a connector, so that from the Canon's hot shoe to a ball mount to a Ulanzi fast claw clip. No, the fast claw, not the clip, just so it's a quick release from Ulanzi I made a video on in the past. And then the A6000 is the HDMI connection and the AC adapter through the DC coupler. Same thing for the Canon. I got some tape here to hopefully keep it in line. But that is the current setup. And just this thing, just in case something loosens. This view is the Nikon Z5 through USB, all automatic settings. At the very least, this is what the Sony will look like with my cheap junk HDMI capture thing through USB. Like, I don't remember the price, but I've said in the past $15 is probably about how much it costs. So that could definitely be affecting the image quality from the Sony. And the Sony, the A6000 is 1080p, so it's not going to be anything extra that the capture device can't handle. But at the very least, it could be messing with the colors more so. Yeah. It's kind of cool. Canon, it does look quite a bit darker. Of course, they're not the same exact position, but I feel like they're close enough that it shouldn't be that big of a difference. Yeah, that's very green. Canon's default, or where people say they love Canon colors, is because it's magenta. It's a red. They push towards the reds. So my face has a more red look to it. And here, my lips are red, but a lot of my face is very yellow, green type of cast to it. Now this light back here is part of the reason, because that gives more of a green color temperature, probably. But yeah, the Nathan Barnett, what was it? Dad Feels in Katakana shirt. It fits well. Feels nice. Wasn't super expensive, and it was funny. So the pandemic kind of forced the hand of the camera companies. to add some type of webcam functionality to quite a few of their cameras. I think it's worked well, but I wouldn't 100% trust the camera companies are going to keep these webcam software driver things working long term. So I wouldn't buy a camera that only does it. Like the M50 original, you can only do the USB webcam. You can't do HDMI out. It doesn't have clean HDMI. But actually, this old Sony A6000 is going through HDMI. Works just as well. Autofocus with the kit lens seems fine. Yeah, very, very good. So that would probably be a better option, actually. You need a capture device, but the one negative is that you can't see yourself and the camera's LCD because the A6000 doesn't flip forward. With the M50, you can see it in this mode. If you were to get the M50 Mark II, you can do clean HDMI, but the camera's LCDs on Canon cameras turn off after 30 minutes without activity like pressing buttons, touching the screen. It's just something you can't stop. It doesn't really affect anything, but you won't be able to have the screen running the whole time. You can always refresh, like get the camera active again if you need to change something, but with HDMI out, you just won't be able to get the screen to stay on the whole time. I think my main recommendations, the problem is that these days, just like anything else, cameras are hard to come by. Whoops, that's not what I want. So for example, I'm thinking this is going to be in stock. Yeah. So M50 Mark II, you can get one of those right now. It's 1080p. This view, it is through the USB and it's not 1080p. It's less resolution than 1080p, but I think it's acceptable. Even with this low resolution, it looks okay, especially when you have a good lens on it. In this case, the kit lens isn't amazing, but you can do things like that. So you can change your look if you want, but you'll have more noise in the image and everything else. Although you can get different lenses with large apertures to improve on the quality, but it's not 1080p. Okay. More webcam stuff going. So today I have quite the setup. First off, we've got this view. This is the Canon EOS M50 with the Sigma 16mm f1.4 at 1/60th of a second, f1.4, ISO 160. You can't do USB for two Canon cameras through their software as far as I understand. So I've got the two here with the M6 Mark II on the top. It's a Viltrox 23mm f1.4 at 1/60th of a second, f1.4, ISO 160, so the same settings as the M50 with the Sigma. M6 Mark II is set to clean HDMI with 1080p, but it can also do 4K. I don't have a HDMI input or I don't know, what should I call it? USB capture device. That's the type of words I was thinking of. The capture device for that. But come on, focus. Not my face. Totally ignore my hand. Pretty smooth. That's a Viltrox 23mm f1.4, like I said. Blurry backgrounds, but I'm not very far away from here, so it's not going to be super blurry, but thin depth of field. Looks pretty good. And also have that one, that's the Z5 with the kit lens. And also through USB, my capture device is a piece of cheap junk, but it works and it's been consistent. I wouldn't say the quality is amazing for that capture device, but if you got a good capture device, You do the HDMI like this with the A6000, that's 1080p. So the M50 at the moment is in stock. $699 with the kit lens, but then you have to buy a DC coupler, AC adapter, potentially some HDMI equipment if you want to go that route, or use the USB utility as long as it works. Yeah, you can get this, but you need a lens, so you could potentially get this and then buy a different lens, like the Sigma 16mm. It's probably 300 something right now. EFM 374. I paid $300 for mine. But it was like a Black Friday deal, so you probably can get it cheaper than this, but it depends. That's a nice lens for any of that stuff. 30mm might be a little too close. So for example, let's get up here. Okay, so this is probably around a 30mm because I can change the kit lens. That's really close. So this is 30. This is 15. So right here, this is a 30. That would be pretty tight depending on your setup. Mine is kind of arm's length away. Let's see what Sony has in stock. Sony's had some real trouble with making cameras right now. ZV-E10, which was a very recent release for them. But you can see this is not in stock. This would be a good webcam solution if you can get one. See if the white one, nope. $800 with the kit lens. The kit lens is not great, but you can see it here. It has a power zoom. There we go. So that's 50mm. And here we go. That's 16mm. Kind of cool that it can do that. For video situations, the quality is fine. But with photos, the quality of this lens, especially wide, not so great. You get dark corners and it's just not great for photos. But it works. Oh, I can do that too. A little easier. The power zoom is pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'll do the kit versions. Okay. A6000 is one of the older ones. I think for some reason Sony is able to make these still. It's probably like a parts related thing. I paid $200 for this camera. 200 at Target when it was a period where there wasn't a supply shortage and they were basically going to replace this with the A6100, which they recently said is end of life. So it's some weird parts procurement issue with the A6100, which is the newer camera compared to this, but they're still selling this and they got rid of the new one. So it's just a really weird situation. I wouldn't spend a ton of money on the A6000 is what I'm saying. Wow, they really don't have much. Wow, that is crazy. B&H, one of my affiliates here, they're a big camera shop in New York. So generally they should have a lot of stock. The A6600, a decent-ish option, but it's expensive. I don't think I would go with that either. But yeah, that's pretty bad. Their stock situation is so terrible on Sony cameras. Better option would be the ZFC, but I haven't used it personally, and it's not the cheapest thing ever. So yeah, it's still pretty pricey. This is an APS-C camera, and the screen flips out like the M50 from Canon. So it's kind of a weird mix of retro and current stuff, but it's at the very least an option for some people, and it's in stock. Autofocus on the Nikon cameras is decent from what I've experienced so far with the Z5. For video, I'm saying. It's not the best, but it works enough. You could do the EOS RP. Probably be a decent webcam. This is another 1080p camera, not a 4K. Technically it does 4K, but it's a super big crop on it. Fujifilm, I would assume HDMI out on their better cameras would be fine. Again, I'm not a good person to say much about those. Let's see what else we have. Olympus. Some of their recent, more expensive stuff, like this one, has decent video autofocus. But I mean, that's $1,500 just for the camera without a lens, and it's micro four thirds, so it's a smaller sensor than all of these cameras that you see here. I'm not sure which exactly of their cameras have the phase detect autofocus for video. All of the Panasonic do not have phase detect on the sensor. Of course, you can use it in manual focus, but that's another step, another thing to try to deal with. Again, if you want a really higher quality option, you can do 4K HDMI out. So if you have a 4K HDMI capture card or USB HDMI capture thing that does 4K, you can use the M6 Mark II. And of course, you need AC adapter solution to make it run a long time. M200, I've heard some people say that it overheats, but I haven't used it, so I can't verify that. But it is one of the cheaper ones, so you could take a chance. Maybe. So that's $550 with the lens. And with this one, you can do the HDMI and the USB, which is nice. But again, I haven't verified if it will run for a long time. Of course, you could buy something used. So in this case, KH, one of my affiliates, they sell used cameras. The thing is, they usually sell the camera without a lens, so you'll need to buy it. You'll need to understand what lenses go with what and figure it out type of thing. So this is not for the user that doesn't understand cameras at all. This one is kind of a classic dedicated camera for using it as a webcam. Now again, I've always heard it might overheat type of thing, and that is potentially possible, but a lot of people have used this camera for a webcam. You can see 354 without a lens, so you have to buy a lens for it. So for example, we've got the 18-55, which is not quite as wide as the one that I have. The one that I have is this 16-50. It's $100, kind of expensive. So you'd be spending close to the price of the M200. Potentially, you could use eBay, maybe a local seller. There are options at the very least. As you can see, the situation is not great with APS-C cameras, especially Sony for some reason. I don't know what their deal is, but Canon, it seems like all their EFM stuff is available, which is good. If you're interested in that, 1080p, definitely a lot of options there. You got the one for 4K with HDMI M6 Mark II. But yeah, the other cameras, I just don't have a lot of experience with them, especially the recent stuff. So it's not a great way. I can't really give you a good suggestion if I haven't put some effort into trying it out. So the Fujifilm and Olympus, stuff like that. Yeah. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Scott Photography Bonsai. Thanks.